We like to describe our report as a carefully edited collection of U.S. news headlines, papers across the country, summarized for you in one place. We do it here every day. Here's our top story. A new analysis of foreclosures came out yesterday. The USA Today take on the numbers is that just 35 counties account for about half of all the foreclosure trouble across the country. No surprise, really, that these are the places where prices rose quickly and then collapsed quickly. Most of those counties are in Florida, California, Nevada, and Arizona. Regional coverage of this story in the Miami Herald. Miami attorney Kendall Coffey is quoted. He wrote a book about foreclosures, and he says Florida is ground zero in the foreclosure crisis. There's an image of a 99-cent store in the New York Post this morning because you may soon be able to add Citigroup shares to the list of items that can be purchased for $1. Just to rub it in, the Post points out that bargain store operator Dollar Tree gets about $40 for a share of its stock. The bad economic news parade continues on the front page of the New York Times with a similar story about the decline in value of the American companies that were supposed to be the rocks of the stock market, the blue chips. The Times points out a share of General Electric stock doesn't even buy you 2 of the company's compact fluorescent light bulbs anymore. From Detroit, just how real is the possibility of a bankruptcy filing for General Motors? Detroit News columnist Daniel Howes says, yes, it is a very real scenario. He writes, denying the depth of its troubles won't erase the arc of the next few months. Probably, he writes, the most consequential weeks in the company's 100-year history. Now, I did find it refreshing to see a slightly reassuring headline on the front page of the Wall Street Journal about retail sales. The story says Americans finally started spending again in February. A lot of that spending came at Walmart, but at least people were spending, even if it was at a discounter. Walmart's actually going to be able to increase its dividend. There's an economy spin to the main story on the front page of the Weekend Journal section. The headline is Luxury Strikes Out. The Wall Street Journal says the New York Yankees, the New York Mets, and the Dallas Cowboys are opening 3 of the most expensive stadiums in history, and the timing couldn't be worse. Speaking of these economic times and luxury, the headline on USA Today's travel page is Guilt Trip. The story says luxury is getting a bit of a bad name. People are either canceling travel, so it won't appear that they're overspending, or they might still go on the trip but downplay it, saying they're traveling to a local ski hill when in fact they're going to quietly go off to a resort in Switzerland. In California, R&B singer Chris Brown in court to hear the accusations that he beat his girlfriend Rihanna. The story doesn't get a lot of front page space in the California papers. The Daily News does mention the coverage only at the bottom of the front page. Compare that to the New York tabloids. The New York Post says he slumped next to his attorney as his heartbroken mom listened to the details of 2 felony charges, and the New York Daily News headline says the details of the case are brutal. The headline is, in just minutes he pounded Rihanna's face to a pulp. There's coverage on pages 12 and 13 of this newspaper exploring the possibility that she may only minimally cooperate with prosecutors. So the question arises, do they have a case without her? The main story on this page says the argument on February 8th was triggered when Brown got a lengthy text message from another woman. I guess one good rant deserves another. The Chicago Sun-Times picking up on Jon Stewart's takedown of CNBC. Ranting reporter Rick Santilli had agreed to come on Stewart's show and then canceled. Stewart responded with a retrospective of horrible economic predictions on CNBC over the months leading up to the economic meltdown. In the British papers, and in some of the American papers, but the British have a way of covering these stories, details about Michael Jackson's announcement in London that he will do his 10 final shows ever there. With a nod to the absurdity of all things Jackson, the Daily Mail says there was no moonwalk yesterday, no dancing, not even the wiggle of a surgically enhanced hip. Jackson insists it will be only these 10 shows. The promoter, though, was already saying, you know, if we did a 3-year tour, we could bring in $400 million. And that's something Jackson might find attractive. Washington Post covering the healthcare summit in D.C. yesterday. Senator Ted Kennedy made an appearance at that event. The president pushed again for proper health care for all Americans. He said when times were good, we didn't get it done. When we had mild recessions, we didn't get it done. He said there's always a reason not to do it. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reports on some of the participants who traveled to Washington for the event. 54-year-old custard stand operator Jim Stauffer among them, one of only 7 people invited to represent everyday Americans. He had complained about being an outsider in the healthcare system, that he was hurt, he said, by high deductibles and policies that forced him to carry a different health carrier than his wife. Dr. Gupta has turned down a job with President Obama. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution and other dailies report that Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent, is bowing out as a candidate for U.S. Surgeon General. One woman missing after a natural gas explosion that shook downtown Bozeman, Montana. Several historic buildings were demolished. Authorities say it'll be days before they're able to pinpoint a cause. In the Los Angeles Times and every paper in California, the coverage on Proposition 8, the California Supreme Court indicated it would rule that Proposition 8 validly abolished the right for gays to marry. The court will allow same-sex couples who wed before the November election to remain legally married. The San Francisco Chronicle says the judges indicated that they will side with the right of the voters, that the voters had the right to amend the Constitution in California. Protesters from both sides pictured along with that coverage. And the Contra Costa Times includes a quote from a lawyer representing the same-sex couples. That lawyer rejects the idea of some sort of civil union status instead. Michael Morocco said, if you're in the marriage business, do it equally. If you're not going to do it equally, get out of the business. Finally, Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, trying without much success to cut off a wave of late-night monologue jokes about research into the smell of manure. In the Cedar Rapids Gazette, Harkin responds to the criticism of the $1.8 million effort to control the smell of manure. He says in farm country, manure and odor management are profoundly serious challenges. This is an appropriation for manure research that's contained in a $410 billion spending bill, making its way now through Congress. We invite you to come back every day to get all the top news from U.S. newspapers at patspapers.com. On our website, you'll find links to all the stories that I've featured today.